welcome back. My name is Sheldon McLeod. This is Thinking Out Loud, presented to you here on the Saltwire Network. And I am one of those rare folk who actually like grocery shop. And I got to say, the price of everything these days is up. Price of fuel, I mean, that's kind of moderating a bit. And I thought what was very interesting was that there will be an opportunity to hear from some of those grocery magnates, those people in the big people in the industry. And yes, there's no question, really, we're talking about one person. The other names you probably wouldn't recognize. Galen Weston obviously has been a public face of his company for quite some time. And as the food professor writes, there will be an opportunity in Ottawa to hear from the folks in the Standing Parliamentary Committee on Agriculture, and it is political theater. What does that mean? Sylvain Charlebois is known as a food professor. He's with the Agri-Food Analytics Lab at Dalhousie University. Sylvain Charlebois, so nice to see you again. Thank you for joining the conversation.
My pleasure, Sheldon.
And just to, I guess, get some things out of the way, Analytics Lab, tell me a little bit about it, what you do with that group, because some people say, where did this guy come from? You are in a lot of media interviews in this country, and you work hard at that. So tell me a little bit about your background, just for people who don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a professor at Dalhousie University, proud to be a part of a great institution here in Halifax. And so we have this lab. We employ about 15, 16 people. The funding comes from, generally speaking, from the federal government mainly and the provincial government. And we work on different projects like urban agriculture. We also look at different issues related to labeling and, of course, food inflation, food affordability, pricing, all that stuff. That's the one thing that kept us busy the last little while.
This is the Food Report 2023. When, was that released?
Yeah, you can see it right in the back here.
And this was just released when?
In December. So actually on December 5th, and that was the day I was actually testifying myself in Ottawa before the same committee. Mr. Galen Weston, Michael Medline, and Eric Laflèche will be testifying before on Wednesday.
And that predictor was saying we were going to pay a lot more for food. The report from 2022, you were pointing out, you kind of lowballed it. You called it. People said it was outrageous, and you were actually lower than what the actual food inflation rate was like for 2022.
You're right. So a year before, so in 2022, when we actually presented our forecast for the year 2022, we actually said that that prices would go up by 7%. And at the time, we were called alarmists, and we know what happened in 2022. It just created a new baseline for costs. And on top of that, of course, there was Ukraine, and Ukraine just made things worse. It blew everything out of the water. So we ended up with a plus 10.4% in 2022. So that hurt a lot. And in December of this year, we also presented a very, very difficult report to accept, a 5 to 7%. Again, we're expecting a rough winter, which is exactly what's happening right now. It's been rough, but in the spring, summer, we are expecting things to calm down a little bit.
And this meeting, you're saying, is political theater. Why?
Because I was there. I mean, essentially, when I saw what MPs were asking, because I was actually with the CFO of Sobeys and the CFO of Loblaw, and everything was politicized, really. And I didn't feel the committee wanted to understand what was going on, because it is a global phenomena, Sheldon. I mean, Canada's food inflation rate is actually the third lowest among G7 countries still right now. So it's important for them to understand, but also there are also important questions to ask. For example, how much profits are actually coming from food sales specifically? It's not something that is easy to find when looking at balance sheets, because these companies sell cosmetics, they sell clothing, prescription drugs. So for Canadians, I think it's important to know exactly how much profits are generated from food sales specifically. I didn't hear that. The other thing that I didn't hear is that operational margins in Canada are double of what they are in the US. And so it's been, let's let's put it this way. I mean, it's been cozy for grocers in Canada. It's less competitive. So I certainly would want to know more about how they see Canada becoming a more, say, competitive landscape when it comes to food distribution. Because right now it's not as competitive as it is in the US.
And then we add supply management, which is another layer of control of price. It's folks have pointed out the price of milk went up again, and farmers obviously have supply issues with their own. Diesel fuel's up. I'm assuming fertilizer, all of that goes up, and then we see the prices increased on the other end. So do we need to have that conversation? Do you think that's going to happen, or is it grocery store CFOs and presidents are going to just say, well, it is what it is, and we're doing well because, well, everything's expensive, and that's how, 1% of 1,000 is always obviously greater than 1% of 100.
Actually, in December when I was there, I did suggest the committee to look beyond the grocery business, to look at processing, to look at primary production. And on Monday, actually, they're inviting dairy processors, so they'll probably have a say in terms of how supply management actually works or doesn't work for them. Input costs have gone way up, and so we've seen companies like Lactalis, Danone, AgroPure increase their prices, and obviously grocers don't have much of a choice but to increase retail prices eventually. So that's hurting all of us.
We live in a capitalist society, and people can make money. They tend to hear that competition helps make it more fair for everyone. But I don't know about you, oil companies, record profits, banks, record profits. There are a lot of corporations that are doing very well right now. Yeah. And you look at the food service, and people have been attacking Sylvain Charlebois for, in some ways, defending the fact that these are companies that are making money. So how do you square that?
Well, I mean, it's a good question. I think the criticism comes from a place of frustration. I think a lot of people are frustrated. I'm frustrated. I'm a consumer as well, so I can actually appreciate why people are upset, why people are concerned. Right now, Sheldon, everyone is hit with a double whammy. They look at their food bill. That food bill is going up, but they're also looking at mortgage payments. They're looking at shelter is a necessity of life as well, and so they have to pay more for both right now, all at the same time. So that's why I think a lot of people out there are scared, and that fear comes out on social media. And I try to actually balance the debate as much as possible. On the one side, I actually think that Canadians are well served, but on the other hand, we have some issues. I mean, look at the bread price fixing scandal. The investigation is still ongoing. It's been 8 years, Sheldon. We still don't have an outcome. Like, seriously, a lot of Canadians out there feel unprotected. And I think that's why a lot of people are just out there voicing their concerns.
There is a lack of trust in a lot of systems right now, whether it's government, whether it's regulatory agencies, or whether it's the businesses trying to do business with you. Whether it's, I'm talking power is an essential service, electricity, people would say cell phones or internet, but groceries, that's the one that hits hard. So what does Galen Weston do at this political theater? What role does he play? What does he say that can make anyone perhaps stand behind him or beside him and say, okay, I get you now?
I would ask two specific questions on Wednesday. One, the blackout periods from November to February. What is going on there? Like, why do we still need a blackout period? Vendors aren't allowed to actually increase prices from November to February. Well, guess what happens, Sheldon? Prices go up. They jack up prices in October, and they jack up prices in February. How does the consumer win? I would ask that question to Galen Weston. And the other question I would ask to Galen Weston is this. There's a code of conduct being worked on right now in Ottawa to actually discipline the supply chain. It would actually lessen the power that companies like Loblaws, Walmart, Sobeys would have. And that will give an opportunity for processors to voice their concerns about extra fees, higher prices, and things like that, because it's been tough negotiating with companies like Loblaws. They have a lot of power. And also, independents have disappeared over the years. How do we protect them? The code of conduct will protect independent grocers, giving more choice to consumers, and processors, again, more choice to consumers. I would ask Galen Weston, Michael Medline, and Eric Laflèche, do you support the code, yes or no?
And you've also pointed out that competition is something that we look for, but the prices are very widely. I went to a grocery store yesterday, or I guess it was Saturday, and one item is $2 at one store and it's $4 at another.
Yeah,
and that whole idea of how marketing works,
the same product,
exactly the same product, and people will say, well, that's gouging. But how do you get?
But Sheldon, here's the funny thing. So if prices are different for the same product, they'll say it's gouging. If it's the same price, people will say, oh, it's collusion. Right. Who wins?
Well, the customer is paying out of pocket, and it's expensive. And you can actually see that frustration that you've described with people who are saying, you know what, if you see someone stealing from a grocery store, no, you didn't. And that did raise a few eyebrows, and folks are perhaps saying you are speaking on behalf of the grocery stores. And
I've seen someone steal at a grocery store. I didn't see them. I mean, there's a difference between organized crime and one person who's desperate stealing out of desperation. That's a totally different story altogether. But right now, the concern that I certainly have, and a lot of grocers have, is organized crime around food. I mean, you have thousands and thousands of dollars being stolen right now across the system, and that's really a problem for all of us because we pay for that. But should we actually be outraged when someone goes into a grocery store to steal a sandwich and milk? No, that's a different story altogether.
And we're getting to the point of this conversation. We're just about to wrap it up, and a lot of folks will be paying attention to what happens in the news over the next few days with this committee hearing in Ottawa. And other people, they're not going to pay attention. It wouldn't matter what was said. They think the system's stacked against them. And maybe they're right in some ways. If you have the money, you can afford it. If you don't have the money, none of this seems fair. And that's a difficult position for people to be in.
I think the committee has to has to ask itself one question: how do we make Canada a more competitive market? Look at what happened to Nordstrom last week. Look at what happened to Target in 2014. Canada is an expensive place to do business in. We don't have one Canada. We have several provinces with different set of rules, and the Atlantic pays a dear price because we actually truck in most of the food we consume. It's really expensive in our region. Why? Because we don't really have a strategy for our agri-food sector, and distribution is really complicated from one province to another. Think of interprovincial barriers. You and I, we've spoke about this several times. It does end up costing money to companies. Walmart is an exception because they actually incrementally grew over time when they entered the market in 1994. Target just decided to invade Canada to its detriment. They just left months later. And so we need to recognize that. How do we actually make Canada a more competitive place? And I think really we need to ask ourselves questions about barriers, labor costs, the red tape that actually happens, the different set of rules. In America, it's much easier to do business from one state to another, not in Canada.
Well, we will leave it at that for today. We'll look for your comments later in the week. Sylvain Charlebois with the Agri-Food Analytics Lab and Professor Food, thank you so much.
Take care.